Hello, everyone, and welcome to 180 Degrees of Impact. My name is Matt Scott, and today I'm here with May Al-Karooni of Globechain. May, how are you doing?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
Good, good. It's good to see you. It has
Likewise.
been a while. We first met in February 2017 in Portland, Oregon at the Nike Launch Circular Innovation Summit, and so it's been a while, but it's good to be here in London, and I'm glad that we're able to connect now.
I know, it's been a while.
So how have you been? How maybe a good question, how have things, actually this isn't a fair question because I know they've changed a lot, but how have things changed since then?
Yeah, well, I've got more grey hair from
I
the
didn't
start.
notice that.
Thank you. So no, it's a bit of a whirlwind actually. I think when you saw me, I was probably year 2 into Globechain, and from there, basically another year of me working on my own, a year or 2 years, and then the business started growing quite rapidly and quickly, and obviously I was being very stretched, so I decided to go for VC funding. But what's unique is because it's a new business model and the way it all operated, I actually managed to get it creating revenue and a bit of profit before I went to get VC funding. So we got VC funding late summer last year, just under $1 million, and basically from there I've grown my team from 0 to we're now 10 people.
Fancy.
So yeah.
Fancy. Yeah, it's crazy how quickly things grow, but also how slowly things grow. And there's that dynamic there that's interesting. But I remember when I first met you, and specifically I remember like the soundbite clip that I did of you for the launch social media channels, where you introduced yourself and you said Globechain is a reuse platform for corporates. Like, for those who are listening or watching and don't know, even more, who are you and what is Globechain?
Yeah, of course.
What's your story, and then how does Globechain fit into that?
No, of course. So Globechain is a reuse marketplace, and it connects corporate companies to charities and small businesses to reuse and redistribute unneeded items. We focus in a couple of sectors. So it's B2B, retail, which is fixtures and fittings and obsolete stock, construction materials, anything from like your light fixtures all the way to your flooring, fire doors, everything you see here, the doors and the panels. We do medical equipment, patient bed staying solution, and obviously your classic office refurbs and furniture and computers. And our USP, feel like we've got three main areas that people know us for. When a corporate lists the items on the site, within 24 hours they're requested, so it's super quick in bulk. Our largest thing we've ever done is 13,000 pallets of brand new kitchens for a very famous DIY store. And then we collect data called ESG data on the impact. So we collect social, economic and environmental impact data on the giving. So everything from kilos diverted to landfill all the way through to did it help with upskilling and employment levels. And we collect it on a dashboard and as infographics for the company, and we give it back to them, and they use that actually for tendering processes, tax offsetting, their P&L accounts, sustainability reports obviously, and tenders, and getting points in construction and hotels as well.
Wow. And I definitely want to come back to, and we'll come back to more of the why, but I think it's so interesting to me. I have the benefit with you of being able to look back, I think that's about 2.5 years or so, and to see how you explained your work then and how you explain it now. In your eyes, what difference has that 2.5 years made for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been massive, to be honest. It feels like it's a lot longer, going back to your kind of why does it take so long? I think different dynamics have changed and drivers. So, for example, top to bottom, if you like, government drivers, industry drivers, the UN climate change targets, all that's been bubbling over the years. So at the beginning when we first started, no one really listened to me saying reuse. They didn't think I had a business model. The marketplace was very new in the sense that we didn't sell products. So it was very hard for people to get their head around us giving away business products for free. How do you make our money and so on. And then over time, people just started to wake up. So it was roughly 2 years, just everybody out of the blue in January decided they wanted to come on board. So there was a shift in, whereas before we used to go out as a startup to try and get the business. Now it's more inbound, and we have to make decisions on who do we take, when do we take them, and where do we take them, kind of thing. So definitely it's changed culturally. Obviously I've had to grow up and you know, manage people and create structure and processes in place. So there's a massive amount of learning, and as well learning how to have funding.
Yeah.
Right. People assume like you just get funding and it's great and you can spend it. Well, it can go very quickly if you don't spend it correctly. You know, you need to kind of budget and put things in place, set. So, you know, it's about really networking with the right people and speaking to other startups that have been ahead of the game. And I really love listening to the fail stories, because for me, it's like, I don't want to be making those mistakes, or at least limit them. So they're the better pieces of advice. It's been crazy. Like I won't lie. It's been 7 days a week for a long time.
Where do you get those fail stories, by the way?
Just talking really honestly with other entrepreneurs. You know, basically, or I'd be like, listen, I've got this situation, or have you had this problem in the past? And usually it's a yes. But usually companies at scale up stage usually have similar challenges, whether that's the technology wasn't right at the beginning, you've got people problems, talent problems, you know, structure problems, or maybe not product fit. So you can find someone somewhere that's been through it, you know, and normally entrepreneurs are quite open to discussing it, because it's not a bad thing. And actually, I prefer people when we hire them to have had those challenges, because then they can tell me when they see it in the future.
Yeah, and you kind of, when you've been through something like that, you do a lot to not repeat history, or you see the warning signs early and you navigate, and that's one benefit that comes with time and that experience. But also, like you're saying, actually talking with people, then you're able to say, hey, that sounds like that thing that other founder told me about with their company. Maybe I should steer away from that. And so there's a question I love that I've heard on like another podcast that I listened to, and like the podcast host asked, like, has your journey looked like what you expected it to look like? And so I'll ask you that.
Gosh, it's very different, I'd say. I don't actually look and go, oh, where's my life in a year or two? I kind of like, I just drive it. I have an end goal and I focus on it, and every day I try to achieve it, if that makes sense, or every day is working towards it. So however that looks, I think you don't have the time to absorb it. Because of the speed sometimes you go at. So, you know, if I look back in the year, I'm like, wow, we've achieved a lot. But you don't notice it like that. Like, we have a joke in the office, you know, one of my employees will go away on holiday for a week and she comes back and we've opened a new country. Do you know, like, this is that kind of thing. Like, we joke, like, you know, blink and we've got a client on board, sneeze and this happens, you know, go away for a day, like, we've gone global. Do you know, we have like a little bit of a joke around about it, because that's the speed we're going at, but we don't recognize we're going that quick until somebody actually goes away and has a break and comes back, and, you know, they're like, oh, like, I've got so much to catch up on. And I'm like, you're right, like, we've done a lot.
This point is so interesting to me, because I don't know, people ask the question a lot, where do you see yourself, or it's a really typical question, where do you see yourself in X amount of time? And I mean, while that's a great question, I also personally don't, you know, there are things that we all want to accomplish, but I feel like when you're just doing, like, it's hard to keep up with those things. Like, do you think that mindset of just kind of going along and, you know, the time's flying by, is that something you found a benefit to you? Or like, I'm curious how, if you would recommend that for other startups or other companies that are building out their work?
I think, look, your work's never going to end. That's what I've noticed. You know, like, you can work really hard. I used to work really long hours, and you just got to manage it like you're always going to have work. You know? So for me, I think I try not to, people always talk about like when you're exiting, what's your plan? I don't think you should look at it like that. I think you should look at it as like a long-term business. And if something comes along like that and you want it, go for it, you know? But I don't believe like, people's lives don't work the way they want it really. Like people are like, by 25 I want this, and by 30 I've got 3 children. And when you go back and you're like, actually no, you're 50 with no children, or you're 50 and you're just having kids, or 40 or something like that. So it's kind of the same in business. Like I think if you restrict yourself so much, the other opportunities and the possibilities won't come by you. So I think like the advice would be, like have your end goal and focus on it, but don't put a time limit to it. Like it could come tomorrow, it could come in 10 years, you don't know. Just be prepared for it, right?
Yeah. I love that advice. Like, be prepared, but don't necessarily have a narrow view of what you're trying to accomplish, or what you'll take in and what you're going to push away.
Yeah, because Globechain might not look the same in 10 years.
I mean, the markets change, and so.
I mean, and it shouldn't, right? It should evolve with the market. So it's always like I'm always looking 2-3 years ahead in what does the future look like in the business, but I'm still in the present moment working out what to do as well. So there's a balance.
I'm so curious though, going back, like, just close your eyes and go way back into your brain. You don't need to close your eyes. I'm just going to close them. But like going back to when you were a teenager, for instance, or whenever it might have been that you first started to think about your life as an adult, when you realized that you would need to kind of like do things on your own and support yourself and all. Did you have an idea of, well, first of all, what were those origins for you, but also did you have an idea of what you wanted to
So I didn't wake up one day and go, I want to work in waste. Let's put it like that. I didn't go one day, I'm going to work in waste. No, I didn't actually know. My early years, because I was born in Iraq, so the culture, coming here was all about doing your classic careers, doctor, lawyer, very stable, solid, known jobs. Not necessarily, it was like, career, earn your money, buy a house, get settled. So that was always programmed in me from an early day. So up to probably, I suppose, by A-levels, it was always like that. So I did sciences, I did maths at A-level and all these things.
What are A-levels? Sorry, for the US.
See, the A-levels, I don't know. They're like when you're 18.
Okay,
you're 18,
yeah, sure. So that's like end of high school, I guess, would be
Yes,
okay,
it's a long time ago. So I don't even know if it's called that now.
Sorry, just
but it's like secondary school in the UK, or a baccalaureate,
exactly.
I think, is a European version. But yeah, it was basically before you go to university.
Okay.
And so I was like, what shall I do with my life, kind of thing. So I just went into accountancy and finance, because to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew, I just want to earn some money, because we were the generation of just earn money, basically. Right. And the recycling generation was there, and it built up over the years, but it wasn't like an environment conscious or sustainably conscious kind of era, if you like. And then really, I remember thinking when I got my first job and started earning money, just something in my head was like, oh, one day you're going to own a business. Like, I want to own a business. And I don't genuinely know where it came from. I just knew when I was making these deals. And I worked in insurance and banking, and I just thought, oh, why am I making money for other people? Like, I'm going to own a business one day, but it's got to be an idea that's really worth leaving a really well-paid job for. So I remember thinking that, but I didn't force myself to think of ideas. I just worked for quite a few years. And then, when it came, it was basically because the bank that I worked for moved offices across the road and disposed of their furniture. And Airbnb and Uber were just becoming famous in the UK, and I just thought, why does no one digitalise waste? And because it cost the bank a fortune, basically £50,000 per person to make the move. So that's really how it got going. But I never thought, oh, I want a global business. I'd be happy with 100 grand was a lot of money for me in those days, 100k, a shop on the corner, even a cupcake shop would have been that would have been right.
It's barely going to get the company to the end of the month. So.
Exactly, I've got one person's salary these days, right? So as one employee in some places. But that was kind of like my thinking, and I genuinely wasn't. ambitiously thinking I'm going to have a global company and a billion company, whatever.
Yeah.
It was just a case of, let me just try this out, like little projects on the side. And then the more I got involved in it, the more I was like, hang on a minute, there's something in this. And the momentum was growing. And then I got really involved in it because I was like, hang on a minute.
But I'm so curious, like what's the piece about waste and like the circular economy, where did that come in for you? Because I feel like with that there's definitely the market opportunity that people have seen, but then there's also that interest side of things. I'm curious where the interest but then also the opportunity meet for you.
So for me, I never, when I created the model, if you like, it is a circular economy model, but that phrase didn't even exist, like reuse didn't exist. So I completely just sold the business from a commercial angle. It's about saving money for companies, reducing landfill and getting the data. So there are three main points a company would use us. And I was very specific to say, like, we're not charity, we're commercial with a conscience, you know, because I just genuinely believe businesses going forwards, we're going to have this responsibility element to their commerce, if you like. And now we're seeing it more and more now. But in those days, no one was doing it. So none of these phrases, circular economy, even existed. So I didn't even have that vocabulary to talk about. It was only really later, like year 4, year 5, and kind of the launch days were very early, pioneering really. There was nothing really around the circular economy. That was when the phrase started to come about, and I used to use it, but I didn't rely on it. To say, like, some people I know will just use it for the sake of using it, whereas others actually are doing it. And I think there's two different types of people when something's fashionable, right? The doers and the thinkers. And really for me, like, whether it's called circular economy or not doesn't matter, because it's an industry that's emerging. Where it did matter was create a benchmark and a market cap for us, which is now 5 trillion. And back in the days, I think it was like 1.3 trillion when it first, so it's the last 3 years, it's like times 4.
That's huge. And
it's huge.
I think it's so interesting because looking at you or thinking of you, there's like, I think a lot of people could look at you and hear your story and think, oh, May got it figured out. Like she just has the mindset of an entrepreneur. But like, what have those challenges been for you along the way? Because one thing I want people to understand also is that, like, this didn't just magically happen for you. It was a lot of work and time and 7 days a week constantly, I'm sure. And so I'd just love to hear what were those challenges and even those some of those notable lessons learned that come to mind along the way for you to get to where you are, where Globechain could actually exist.
I mean, definitely the first couple of years, a lot of sacrifices, like no friends, no family, no coffees, no nice dinners, no holidays, like there's definitely sacrifices, I was in a bit of an unusual situation where we didn't get funding at the beginning. I think people, if they're lucky enough to get funding, it's a lot easier, but I don't think assume you can get funding. So always plan with that. Having said that, the pros of having no funding meant that I could really dig deep into understanding the business, and that's probably what sets us very separate to everybody else. Like, there's no one really doing what we do. We're a little bit ahead of the game. We had a couple of startups try and copy in the past, but ultimately they were just copying what we were doing, not understanding why we were doing it. Do you see what I mean? And I could see from the way they were building their own systems that it would fail in 6 months. So I used to look and go, okay, prediction, this is not going to work, or they're going to pivot, or they're going to do something else, and they would, and that's just come from experience of understanding the pain. Basically, I think if you don't understand the pain of something, you're not getting into the real deep understanding of why something happens, or why the system looks like this, or why it operates like this, or what are dynamics. So I think that's like super important. I'd say running a business is 80% mental, 10% business, and 10% craziness. I always say that because you're constantly developing every day a different challenge, but it's about you, if that makes sense. Every day you have to be like, think differently. Every day you have to react to somebody in the office differently. Every day you've got a new personality, so you have to think differently there. Every day you've got a new idea, so it's like, how do you create that and make that into something? So for me, it's about not having a breakdown,
Yeah.
right? And keeping healthy, not burnt out, you know, like having that time to yourself to think, like what I've noticed definitely when I've got the team to take on that work, so I'm not working 7 days a week, but I had to make a conscious decision of like, you know what, if I have to work, it's one day out of the weekend a week, and the other day I don't even open my computer up. So I don't even watch Netflix on a computer or anything, because I relate it to work. My laptop is work. So that's how I do it. So that's how I do it now. And, you know, I go on holidays now, but that's taken a long time to get back in to a routine, you know, and, you know, you can become a bit of a workaholic sometimes too. And, you know, like once I had nothing to do on a weekend, I'm like, what shall I do? Like I didn't plan anything, you know, so I was like bored. But that's, you have to definitely learn. Balance is a tricky one, especially when you're growing at the speed, you know, there's a lot to do.
I feel like that's a question I have, because I think I'm so glad you touched on a lot there, but like around the sacrifice, and I love what you're saying around the 80% mental, 10% business, 10% craziness, and then really breaking it down, because I think you just in explaining that did a really good job of painting a picture of what it's like and of the sacrifice and the level of commitment. But like, I guess I wonder, how do you go about finding that balance or finding that self-care? What does that look like for you when you could find it? Because I think of a friend of mine who I was just talking with recently, who was saying, he said his phrase is quote unquote default working, and so it's constantly working, constantly being available. And I was thinking, I don't like that. I know for your brain, like that is not healthy, but at the same time, I also understand that like you need to sacrifice things. Like you can't always get coffees, you can't always be with your friends and do all of those things that people would probably do without a thought. And so I'd love to hear from you, just how did you figure out what you needed in terms of that time for yourself beyond the business?
I'd say that took like 2 years, and it's always a work in progress, right? So like you get good staff on board and good talent, your work becomes easier, because when you train them and you work with them, they take on a lot of the load as well. So a lot of the workload that I had on myself is now spread out with 10 people. So the pressure is a little bit more like that. But then you have other pressures because you have to manage people, and there's other workloads that will happen, and then you're growing bigger. So it was really difficult for me, but one of the things I sat down with was like, what does taking time out look like for me as a person, and what do I enjoy doing? So I enjoyed like really holidays was a time that I would like shut out a little bit. And then the other thing is like have some rituals that you do, like your time. So for me, my gym is my time. So I know if I'm really stressed out, I force myself to go to the gym, even if I don't have time, because it just de-stresses me. So that is my time. You are always thinking about the business, but over time, I think you can, it's a managing process, you're training yourself to just relax a little bit. And now, weekends, I don't have the guilt of not working and, that kind of thing. But it takes a bit of time, I think. I think when you've been intense for so long, it takes a bit of time to release that. And I'm not saying I'm perfect still, but like I definitely like have my weekends off now, unless I have to work, if that makes sense. If there's something urgent, then I don't mind. I focus on it, but I'll always make sure I have a couple of hours spare somewhere on that side. Do like sports, outdoors, nature. It depends on what you like.
You have a lot of hobbies and interests that you're able to fit into that.
I used to,
time, right?
But you squeeze it in.
It's good to keep an eye on those things. And I think one thing that just to say it from my perspective, that's really notable, I guess, and maybe you recognize this too, but I felt like when I met you at the Launch Circular Forum, being at these different forums, whether it's launch or even involved in something like space apps or really anything that's bringing together people who are creating things, you get the people who are really hyper-focused, which is great, but hyper-focused and serious about their work. And you're like, learn to laugh a little bit. Like, you need to take the time to not take yourself too seriously all the time.
Definitely.
And to be a human. And I think that's something that I remember I don't want to say you doing really well, but just something that I recognized at that time as part of you. And I even see it now where it's like, okay, you have to have a sense of humor and a personality, and you
definitely.
can't, or else you're going to drive yourself crazy.
So
and
true.
so I would
You
just
even have
throw
some,
that in too.
yeah, no, you're so right. I always say that you have a sense of humor because things are going to go wrong all the time. So what are you going to do? Stress about it for your whole life? Like you're going to be stressing every day about something. So you have limits of like what used to stress me 5 years ago won't stress me now, but strangely might stress one of my colleagues.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time they experience it. But for me, I take it very lightly. Now, I still have things that stress me out and feel under pressure. But you have to have a sense of humor and laugh about it because life's too short, right?
Yeah. Do you have any like big picture visions or goals that you're kind of, in a sense, like, I don't want to say moonshot because I really don't feel like anything's really that far to get to, and I guess maybe even the moon isn't that far, but like moonshot sort of goals or anything that you want to accomplish, whether that's with Globechain or otherwise in your life and career?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously for Globechain, I'd love for it to be global and help many people, and I want to like prove the model that can be bigger and it goes beyond even what I anticipated. I'd love that, and I'm really positive. I think like it can happen. We could what if it's not me, someone can do that. From a personal level, it'd be nice to have a little bit of peace. And I'd love to be able to go somewhere without my mobile phone sending me emails. Like that would be the ultimate goal, for me to be able to take a week where I don't look at an email.
Oh, well, I was going to say, your phone's been away from you this whole interview so far.
But I know I can pick it up.
You can pick it up at some point. It's still within eyeshot. So
try a week.
Try putting it 5 more feet away and then take it. No, I think that's, it's just interesting. You touched on a lot of things that are really critical and important there. But, I mean, is there any, I guess I probably have a couple more questions. Yeah. One being, thinking about people who are creators or founders or want to be there. Is there any other advice that you have that you don't think is kind of reflected in the things that you've shared so far?
I always think be confident and trust your own gut instincts. Obviously get people's advice, but there's a point where you can get too much advice and then it really screws your thinking. But one thing I noticed like year 3 was I was a lot more confident because I was seeing other people with not so amazing ideas, sometimes getting funding and everything. And I'm like, why is mine not getting funding? Like, my companies are great, like they're wanting it, blah, blah, blah. So I switched my mentality and I'm like, no, you know what I perceived as like ego, it actually was confidence in people. So I was like, I have a great company, like my product is amazing and it's gonna work and I believe in it. And just that switch is like works miracles, because so I'd say just believe in what you're doing. I think, like that resilience and that persistence with your belief and the trust that you're doing something that's new and is going to work will get you quite far, I think.
Yeah, wow, that's so deep. And like just thinking about, because it kind of shook a little bit when you said that, because that's something where, I look at it and, as someone who works hard on a lot of things, when you see someone who is just out there and they're succeeding and you're thinking, how are they doing that? It's so simple and they haven't worked to that point. But, there's really, I think it's important to also have that confidence in yourself. You could really only control yourself in that sense. And just to follow up to that, do you find yourself looking at other organizations a lot, or do you, like, what's your balance between looking at and kind of studying other organizations, whether they're like companies that have come before you or other organizations that are up and coming, or the balance between that and blocking it all out?
I don't really block it. I think you don't have time to kind of look at everything, but I read a lot of like strategy advice usually from entrepreneurs that have done many things, but they're very quick kind of Medium articles and things like that. I don't look at, there's nothing ahead of us because there's nothing like us. So I actually don't do that. That goes back to the belief of like, we're leading it and I'm going to show you which way this goes. Do you know? So like that's the difference between maybe a product that's already in the market, that's probably a different type of strategy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you would like read and understand other companies, but for me, there's no company that's doing what we're doing. So I genuinely have to believe like I know where the world's going in this particular area, this sector. So I need to drive it and lead it in a way. And that's kind of what Globechain's doing. It's leading a way of reuse, and we're just going to do it really, really well and stay ahead of the game. So for me, it's about how can we evolve it, how can we grow it. Like there's always a challenge with scaling. So I don't really like look at what's she doing around the corner, what's that, A, because I don't have time, but B, that slows you down. Like why would I be looking at that? I know what I'm doing. Do you know? So like let's keep focused, and when I don't know, I'll ask people that have more experience. But usually they're more like generic scale up questions that I'll read about rather than my industry. Don't get me wrong, I'll pick up the press every day. I'll read what's going on globally, in particular things like circular economy, and then I'll skim it, and anything interesting I'll read, and then I'll pass it to the team, and vice versa. The team do the same. So we work as a team quite well to like if we saw something interesting, or if I see like one company that's completely not related to us has a great way of hacking something, I'd be like, can we do this too, but in this way, and then involve our like head of engineering in that and stuff like that.
You also mentioned the advice, and I also want to just give you a chance. Is there anyone in particular who's like helped you further your journey and support what you're doing that you would mention? Because I'm always curious about the people who do support, because everyone mentions I have all these different supporters or advisors, formally, informally, but I'm curious if there are.
So I don't really have any mentors, to be honest. I have a business coach who's been amazing, and I was very anti kind of like life coaches. So this is not a life coach, this is a business coach where she's had operational experience. I think definitely if you can find a business coach with operation, and that means basically they've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. So her name's Davinia Knowles, and she was COO of Mind Candy for quite a few years. It grew the team from a very small team to 200 people. She's been amazing just on the little more detailed things, growing teams and developing the business and structures and things like that. And that's because I've asked her questions and she's delivered amazing things. The other people actually, surprisingly, and this is where you've got to be careful with which investors you pick out, but our lead investor, which is Kindred, have been amazing because they have a very special network of advisors from their network is huge, and that's been very useful because I tap into my lead investor, who's always very helpful, obviously. But like they've all had again operational experience. So they've all had businesses, sold businesses. They have funds now, so they know the problems that happen. They've had the experience, and they're quite wise with their words. So for me, I've tapped into their database, if you like, a lot. And I don't hide anything. Like I'm like, okay, we've got this problem, or have you got somebody to do this, or I haven't got anyone for this, and then they will reach out to people for us. So I'd say get yourself if you're going to get funding, get yourself some good
and they have an incentive to do that, obviously, so that also helps that you understand like, okay, this is where they're coming from, and you have that relationship
completely
with them,
and they have an unusual fund because we're actually carry partners in an option pool for the fund. So all the founders have an option in their funds. So that makes us help each other a lot.
I like that a lot. That's actually the first time that I heard about
it's quite unusual.
Like that. But that's a good unique incentive for collaboration, definitely.
They're very founder centric, like founder friendly.
Awesome. And I don't know how to transition this into this question, but speaking of friendly founders and your journey, I don't know. I want to ask one more key question that I mentioned before we started. If your life were a book or documentary, I love this question. What would the title be, and why?
So I can tell you that straight away because we have a joke about it in the office. So I have a book, and it'd be called "What a Load of Rubbish."
And why? Well, I think
why?
it's obvious, but
obvious in the sense of there's a load of rubbish in the world, but also like a little bit on the sense of humor side, on like people that thought, oh, this is not a business model, this is not a business, this is not investable.
Yeah.
It's almost like that advice was a bit of rubbish too.
Yeah. And I think it goes, I'm gonna really hold on to this like 80% mental piece, especially because you know, again, the sense of humor and just being able to laugh and have a good time with what you're doing, even though of course it's, you know, you need to also take it seriously, so it's a balance and might seem like conflicting information, but you're hitting that balance, and I think that your title, What a Load of Rubbish, is a great title. So I'm looking forward to your book. And a follow-up question I want to actually ask to that, if someone was to write the foreword to your book, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Out of nowhere, that's a question from my friend Eric Dowd, who I was doing some co-interviews with, and he came up with that.
I would say I'd give it to the team.
Wow.
They could do that. It's either the team or the mum. I mean, the mum wouldn't write much because she probably has no idea what I do every day. So,
well, that'd be fun.
She's just like wondering, why am I doing something crazy and not having a job?
Yeah.
So she might write a forward like that, you know.
I think that might be an even more fun one.
Yeah, that could be the fun one. And then if you want a serious one, I would get my team to write something.
They could do like the afterword at the end of the book.
They could be
like
we survived.
We survived this. Awesome. So where can people find more about you, connect with you, and with Globechain, May?
Yeah, so you can go onto our website, globechain.com. And we're in like Spain, United Arab Emirates. We're launching in New York in January. Or we're obviously on LinkedIn, or you can just go on the contact us, and one of us will get back to you.
Wow, awesome. And if you want to learn more about 180 Degrees of Impact and all these interviews I'm doing, with yours being the latest in a while, right after Space Apps, very cool, the day after, I'm right back on it. You could go to www.lets.care, and I'm on social media at Matt Scott GW, and so thanks for this. And as I say at the end of each and every one of my interviews, keep impacting.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks a lot.